before I get into that, just do a brief introduction. So, as Ken mentioned, Sean Myers. I'm actually a fairly recent addition to the StrongMail team, and I'm very excited about where we're going as a company. But it's built on where we've been. And so for those of you who are not familiar, StrongMail's been around for over 11 years now, really helping some of the biggest and best brands in the world drive cross-channel communications for their consumers. And so we're very proud of that legacy. We're very proud of the company we keep. And we're very excited about where marketing overall is headed, the directions upon which we're going. And a lot of that direction is based on change. Marketing's really in the midst of a massive shift. I kind of think of this as sort of tectonic level changes, tectonic shifts in our market. And really what's driving that? Well, the driving factor there is marketing must move faster. So I think, I've heard a lot of conversations around, I see a lot of materials out there talking about, real time and reactive nature of marketing, and this is really true. And really you got to start to parse this and say, well, what does that mean to me as a marketer and what's driving that change? So really the reality is you start to have to think differently about marketing when marketing becomes real time, when you really have to talk to customers and address them in conversations as they happen. And so that's a much different approach than the old mode of sort of slice and dice, batch and blast. You have to start thinking about how you do marketing different. So why now? What's driving this change? Well, it's the consumers themselves. So really, the consumers are really leading this conversation now. They're really pushing marketers along to be different in how they engage and react to the consumers themselves. And this is new. I mean, this is what is fundamentally different, is that we've gone into a world where now consumers are taking the lead. The marketer, you're no longer in control. We can look at this difference in consumers. Actually, we have pictures. I love this picture. This is your brain. This is your brain on Google. This is a very relevant picture to me, a little aside. My little sister actually studies brains in this great state of Florida at the University of Miami. She's a associate professor there. And this is a picture of literally how we as individuals are changing due to the internet. This is a comparison done in 2009 of different consumers and sort of looking at people who were, early days to the internet versus people that were very mature and savvy users of the internet, and how their brains literally were different. Literally interacted with information differently once you became a sort of connected, engaged, digital consumer. And so there's actually real changes going on with us as people. I'll let you a second to read the cartoon. And it's not just our brains, right? It's how we interact. It's the fact that we now live in this world where we're always on, constantly connected. I was just actually attending the Forrester Research does an annual event down in LA for marketing leadership. And they call this the perpetually connected consumer. So it's that new world where now each one of us, I bet probably the majority of you in this world would fall into this bucket. You have multiple devices. You're constantly connected. You're walking around checking your phone. So this is really what's driving a lot of the change in marketing, because this is driving changes in how our consumers expect to engage. It's constant, it's very reactive, it's very instantaneous. I don't know if anyone saw this contrast. This was a contrast that came out in the last papal election, where someone just say, hey, look, let's look at what happened, the previous sort of big newsworthy event in this world and the current, and how those things differ. So they took these pictures, one from 2005, one from 2013. And I like this. I want to know who this guy is in the corner, this flip phone guy. That's the one. But really in the space of 8 years, the world has changed. This picture captures that, right? We've gone from where there's, a couple in a crowd to every single person is standing there holding up their digital device. And this has been very recent, right? The iPhone, right? It's only been out 5 years. It's really something that's just a groundswell of change that we all as marketers have to start thinking differently about how we do marketing. So some things haven't changed. This is the good news, right? Consumers do want to build deep engagements, deep relationships with the brands they choose to engage with. So that's not different. What is different, though, is it's on their terms. So they've changed the game. They now say, no, I do want to engage with you. I do want to build a relationship. I do want to have deep engagement. But you have to do it the way I want. The channels, the time, the content has to be specific to me. And so this is their challenge. This is what we have to do as marketers. We have to do a better job of really addressing those consumer terms upon which they're demanding that we engage. And really this impact is very broad. So, you think traditional, the funnel, the purchase funnel. I don't want to, make bold claims like the funnel's dead. I think a lot of people are talking about that right now. But really we have to start thinking differently about how our consumers engage with their decision making with our brands. And so, is the funnel a wheel? I don't know. But really you have to start thinking about life cycle. So how do your customers flow through their journeys with you as a brand in various touch points of the life cycle? And that life cycle is now, something you should be thinking about, but it's also very complicated, right? It's no longer just a couple touch points, that are staggered every now and again. It's now across many, many, many channels, and it happens in real time. I mean, depending upon your products and services, this can be something that can be, you can go through entire life cycles almost instantaneously. Other things are longer purchase decisions, but as a marketer, you have to really understand that customer, where they are, and what that means to you as far as how you should communicate to them next. And there's risk. There's big risk. Getting it wrong risks everything. As an aside, I don't know if the Island SEO team is in the room, but they should be. This comes up on the first page of results when you start to Google Amelia Island images, so I just had to work this dead whale in here. Everything's at risk because of your consumers' expectations. They want to engage with you, they want to do it on their terms, and if you do not meet those expectations, those relationships are now much, much more portable than they have been in the past. The way consumers engage online just says that, hey, if you're not serving my needs, I can go elsewhere very, very quickly. And so this is the risk. Getting it wrong means broken relationships, broken engagements, and the loss of those long-term consumers. So I always like to bring examples to these kind of opportunities and really talk to, hey, how do you sort of ground this and talk to something that's real that you can wrap your head around? And this is my first time at Email Insider Summit, so I didn't want to risk offending anybody in the audience, so I picked something very personal to me. This is a text I received from my wife very recently, actually. And what's notable about this? Well, this is about real-time, and I'd say marketing, and hold it up my air quotes. This is about, having an engagement that has to be instantaneous. This is SMS, right? The nature of SMS, actually, I'll correct myself, this is iMessage. This is even worse than SMS. My wife can now tell if I'm not typing in a response, and as she stares at waiting for me to answer. And so she sent this, and I looked at it, and it says, hey, remember this, and it's a long, Yelp link. And, of course, I wasn't in the moment of thinking about what she's thinking. I couldn't figure it out, and I didn't have any context. I didn't know how to respond. I had really no idea about, okay, she's expecting a response. What do I say? Well, as Admiral Akbar would say, it's a trap. It's a trap. I had no idea of the history that she was thinking, where she was in her life cycle engagement with me. I lacked both the historical context and the current context to really generate any, other than sort of dumb, drooly response to that. I really was trapped. And so that's really what you have to think about when you're a marketer now, is that you have to have that historical perspective, the current context. These are the new requirements for being successful at marketing. So in that example of my wife, I didn't remember, oh boy, was I in trouble. I didn't remember that 17 years ago, this big shot guy took his now wife on their first date to a hot dog stand in Oakland, California. Oops, awkward. I forgot that. And I forgot that, it was about the time of year where it was the anniversary of our first date. So I didn't have any of that data stored in the memory bank that was accessible to me. And so it's that kind of stuff. If you don't have the data about your customers stored in whatever form of memory bank you have, it's very difficult to be successful as a marketer with really engaging to that person on a one-to-one basis. And again, the risk of getting that wrong, broken engagements. Now, thankfully, my wife has known me for 17 years, so she has already set the bar very low, and her expectations are very managed. And so it didn't break our engagement, thankfully, but there was a little apologizing, and I did take her out to a nicer dinner than a hot dog stand in Oakland, California. So, you kind of get this. We live in a new world. There's new opportunities, the new demands from our customers and how they would like to be engaged with. So how do you as a marketer start to make this happen? And really there's sort of two fronts you have to start thinking about when you say, okay, this is something new, it's different than what I've done in the past, so what are the big buckets here of which I have to put my time and attention against? And the first of those big buckets is the data side. So how do you understand your customers? How do you really process a lot of information to come up with a deep and current understanding for those people? And then once you have that data and you're making some better marketing knowledge from the data, how do you act on it? How do you take that insight and make it into action? How do you automate those actions so that it can be real time across many, many touch points? Any touch points your customers are choosing, because again, you have to remember, right? You're not in control, they are. Consumers do not see channel. They see brand engagements. They're blind to channel. And so you have to be prepared for that, to really reach back to them throughout whatever channels they choose. So now, data and understanding and all this stuff, you might be saying, well, you know what, Sean, I've got a lot of data. I've been doing this for years. What's different? Why is your story different here? Well, it's different when you start to look at what that data is today. And really, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the 3 V's of big data, right? Volume, velocity, variety. Really what's different in this story is that the data is different. We've moved out of this world of sort of the static traditional CRM model into a world of dynamic and real-time, call it interaction information. And so you have to think differently about what kinds of information you're bringing in and the speed at which that data comes into the system, and you must access it and respond to it. So this is really, really different than what we've all been used to over many, many years, and frankly, this is very new, right? This has only happened in recent past. I think IBM has a nice stat out there that they love to tout, that 90% of the data has been created in the last 2 years. Now, I work for a marketing services organization. You should feel pity on me and all those other vendors out there, because if you think about that, right, product roadmaps and plans are made over fairly long horizons. And in 2 years, we've gone from this world where there was some data to this world where there's, oh my gosh, 90% of the entire history of human civilization's data has just been created. How do you address that? It's going to take different approaches. It's going to take different ways of thinking about data and information and how you as a marketer have to have access to it. So how do you start thinking about this? It's a new data-centric world of marketing. And so really you have to start thinking about this volume, variety, velocity of information, and really how do you keep every interaction? So how do you build an interaction data store? How do you know about every consumer at every touch point? It's a very big challenge, and it actually requires different approaches than we've used traditionally. So new technologies, new solutions, new services to build up this sort of more complete, dynamic, real-time picture of the customer. And then, okay, great, you have the data, and I don't know about you, but I've been doing marketing a long time. I'm not a data scientist. I don't actually pretend to be one, but as a marketer, you need new tools. You need new ways of parsing that information to create knowledge that is accessible to you. You need new ways to shape the information to your needs. And so these are very different thoughts than we've had traditionally on sort of the more traditional CRM-centric marketing. This is really about how do you come up with broad understanding and that real-time knowledge to react. So I'm guessing the vast majority of you have sort of, if you drew a picture of your technology architecture or even your organizational structures, it's going to look very similar to this. And what is this picture? This is the picture of sort of the tradition. You build out these giant silos of information, you build out silos of organization, and so, this team here runs mobile, this team here runs email. Maybe they talk, maybe they don't, I don't know. They access different information, they have different tidbits about the customer. You have to really start thinking about how do we break these silos down? Because this picture doesn't lend itself to understanding your customer today. This picture doesn't lend itself to reacting to that customer in real time. This picture is sort of the old, and you have to start thinking differently about the technologies you pick, the architectures upon that those technologies are built upon. There's just much different decisioning in trying to access this world of, all of this information on the consumer and the ability to react to it in real time. So, what do you have to do with this? You have to start breaking down those silos, organizing the information so it suits your needs, and really driving towards being state aware of your customer. What does that mean? It means understanding everything about that consumer over their history, but even more importantly, understanding the context of where they are now. So it's not a static view. It's a very dynamic view that has to be updated in real time, because it's that real-time update that gives you the current context to really say, okay, I know where this person is. I know what they're doing in the life cycle of which I want to engage them. And that means I know what I can do next for them to deliver value through marketing. Not just put out the next campaign, right? To think broader, to think about life cycle and creating value in your marketing. And really, you're only going to get to that understanding of state through those interactions. Right, those are the primary drivers of really you learning and understanding where is that person and what is their current, today, now context. So, great. You're going to have to build a bunch of interaction data. You're going to have to understand customer state. Is that it? No. That's actually, if you did just that, you failed. Because having a lot of data, having deep understanding is meaningless unless you can act on it. As a marketer, that's the must-have. And so you have to act on these things differently, right? So we got to think differently about how we market to consumers. It's the traditional batch and blast, slice and dice, let's segment stuff and create a big campaign and push it out the door. It doesn't really work. We've got to shift away from that model. We have to talk about things like the real-time reflexes in our marketing. So that ability to understand how a consumer's state is evolving in the life cycle. What are the important triggers in that state that might trigger a type of interaction that we want to have with them and generate some value for them as a consumer? And really it's that is going to drive the new next generation of marketing solutions, and that's different, right? That's fundamentally a different technology basis than we're used to. It's going to take new types of approaches, new types of technologies, new types of automations to do this successfully, and I'll do that, of course, across all channels of which your customers choose to touch you. So very different, right? Probably a lot of you have big data warehouses somewhere in the back room, and as marketers, you might even get extracts from those on occasional basis and use that to do your next great marketing. But that sort of backroom model no longer works. You have to have the data. You yourself as a marketer have access to that information so that you can do this real-time reflexes. Have that ability to understand the customer state and react to it as it changes. And as I mentioned earlier, right, your customers are cross-channel. They're frankly channel agnostic, if not channel blind. They don't see channel. They just see engagements with you. I've been doing this myself personally. I'm in several major purchase decisions right now, and I can't tell you. I think most consumers would express how frustrating it is as a consumer when you're trying to engage with the brand, and they don't even know you from one channel to the other. You might have a great successful mobile engagement. They forget you on the web. Their email isn't relevant to what you last were talking to them about. So it's this world of really coordinating all of your communications across all channels for that consistency of experience, right? So that you're not creating frustrated consumers who say, hey, I just talked to you a lot in the social channel. Why don't you know me in email? What the heck? What's going on there? And so as marketers, this is the new bar we have to get over, that we have to really break down those silos. Many of them are organizational. This is going to be a big challenge for us. Break down those silos so that you can have that consistent and coordinated and orchestrated conversation with your customers regardless of what channels they choose to engage with you. So just kind of in closing, I'll leave you with a few points, hopefully with a cup of coffee, make for the great start to a great day. Consumers have changed. I think this is real. This is something that is really happening. It's really happening very rapidly and in the very recent past. iPhones have been around for 5 years. We've all been mobily, connected for only the past 3 years or so. This is a big change and a big opportunity for us as marketers to think a little bit differently about how we engage and make that better and actually make that a competitive advantage for us. You have to start capturing every customer interaction. This is a big ask, but it's a big requirement that is going to be core to future success. Every interaction is important. And frankly, even today, if you say, well, no, Sean, I really know what matters in my data. I only want to keep these bits of it. Well, the fact of the matter is what you know today is guaranteed to be wrong relative to what you will know tomorrow. And so you just have to start thinking along those times. This is how do you future-proof your marketing? How do you capture the information so you can go back and say, well, you know what, new channels arose or new touch points popped up, and how do I now look back differently at the history of those consumer engagements to be a better marketer? So you have to think along these lines, and what are going to be the enablers for you to do this, capture every customer interaction? How do you choose technologies? How do you choose partners that sort of allow you to access this future? So the volume, the variety, the velocity of the information. Are the partners you've chosen to date the ones that are going to get you there? Something to think about. Something to ask those vendors and partners you engage with to walk me through there's 90% of the data of the entire history of civilization has been created in the last 2 years. How are you addressing that? That's different. State. Be state aware. Focus on how you as a marketer start to change how you think about your customers and understanding where they are in your customer life cycle. So make that a priority for yourselves. That being aware of that customer state is going to be critical to being a relevant marketer going ahead. And once you have that great data, understanding of state and everything, really it's going to take automations. It's going to take new types of technologies for you to do that, to have those interactions across many, many channels in near real time so that you live up to that new customer expectation. Right? Because customers are driving this, right? To my earlier point, customers are in control. They're not waiting for you. They're demanding that you give them this picture of real-time interactions. And so you got to think about that. So how is my marketing plan going to evolve? How are my technology choices going to change? How are the partners I choose going to be different than what I've chosen in the past? These are the kind of things you have to think about as you're looking ahead at where marketing goes. And so in closing, I'll leave you with a little good news. So for those of you that don't know your meme, that's Success Kid. And this drives success. This is where the winners and losers of tomorrow are going to be defined. So meeting consumers on their terms leads to much deeper engagements. Failing to do that, of course, leads to those engagements going elsewhere. And really those deep engagements are what's driving ROI. I think everybody has probably have some experience in this in the recent past with things like personalization, things like better content, obviously are driving better ROI in our marketing. And so that doesn't change. That's actually accelerating, if anything. And so it raises the bar on what you need to do as marketers. You have to have a better, deeper, richer understanding of that customer, both from long periods of history across many channels of touch point, and all driving towards where are they now? What's their current state? So that's a big ask, but the good news, if you get it right, there's big rewards. The big rewards are much higher ROI, much deeper engagements, and frankly, winning the marketing battle of, capturing those customer engagements and holding them and maintaining them over the years. So, with that, I'll leave you. And thank you for your time. It's been great starting and sort of kicking off this event. I'm really looking forward to meeting a lot of you in person and hearing a lot of the great content we've got upcoming. But I'll leave you with, find me on Twitter, find my company on Twitter, and definitely love to talk to any one of you about this. I'm personally more excited now than I have been in my sort of 15-plus year career of being a digital marketer. I think the opportunities now are frankly the most exciting I've seen. And it's because the customer has changed. And the customer has new demands and has really raised the bar for us as far as how we need to understand them and engage with them. So with that, thank you. Have a great rest of your breakfast.
Thank you, Sean. And I know that there's a group from StrongMail here supporting Sean. Can you guys raise